Hi guys, and welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. So today guys, I got a good one for you. It's Boosh! Jade City by Fonda Lee. Book 1 of the Greenbone Saga. Book 2, Jade War, is currently out, and Book 3, Jade Legacy, is going to be out next year sometime. So guys, I really liked Jade War. But Jade War took me a really long time to read. Guys, October is a difficult month for me. It took me 9 days to read the 500 pages of Jade War, which is fine, except that that's much slower than I generally read. A 500-page book I should be able to knock out in less than a week, surely. And that's really part of Jade City's appeal and problem, depending on which way you're viewing it. Jade City is an Asian-inspired fantasy, loosely kind of based on Hong Kong, or there's no real clear, is it China, Korea, Japan? And the action is set on the island of Kekon, where jade, the world's finest jade, is produced. And the capital of the city is Janloon, and Janloon is controlled by two rival gangs, essentially. They're families. So there was this war of liberation. The Kekonese rose up in rebellion against the Shatarians, which I'm assuming are the mainland Chinese. It's very difficult to kind of draw the comparisons. Anyway, there was another nation called the Shatarians that they rose up against. This guy named Quan and this guy named Ait. They together kind of led the rebellion, and their two families were just huge, big deal in the rebellion. And it's really interesting to see that it wasn't until after the war and peace was there, it wasn't until peace broke out that the families actually split. And they ended up splitting over, boring domestic crap, like businesses and whether foreigners should be allowed in Kekon and how much jade they should sell the foreigners. Because they have kind of the lockdown on jade, and jade is the source of their magic powers. So guys, this reminded me, reading this, it reminds me of a Yakuza game. Where everything is simultaneously larger than life and also extremely serious. This is very, very much an Asian soap opera. At least that's the feeling that I got. So these two families have split into two different clans. We have the bad guys, they're the Mountain Clan, and then we have the good guys, which is the No Peak Clan, which is just a dumb name for a gang. Mountain is way cooler than No Peak. I don't get it, but there it is. We follow the No Peak clan, which is really run by the Kuan family. Kuan Sen, who is the patriarch of the family, the one that fought in the war with his buddy Ait. He has kind of been sidelined. He is no longer really in charge. And his oldest son, Lan, is really kind of in charge of the day-to-day. He's the pillar. At the head of these families are the pillars. Under them are the weathermen. Weathermen is kind of like their right-hand man. And the weathermen, it's the weatherman's job to kind of make sure all the tributes are paid, all the taxes are paid, all of the kind of the tributaries are doing their part, the loyalists are remaining loyal. They're kind of like the white-collar side of management. And then under them, we have the Horn, and the Horn, for both families, is really the military, or the Ruffentumbel side of the family. The Horn is in charge of street-level activities, charge of kind of protecting turf and making sure that all the protection is there, and they're in charge of fists, which are kind of like sub-generals, and then under the fists are fingers, which are just individual soldiers within kind of the street-level gang. And so that's really the makeup of the families, and our eldest son, Lan, of the Kuan family, so he's the pillar, and other than Lan, our story follows three other members of the Kuan family. We have the youngest daughter, Shay, who left the family, gave up her jade, which is kind of her right to power, her right to be part of the family, to move to Espinia, which I think is America, with an Espinian soldier that she was dating. And so that relationship has ended, and she has recently come back. And then we've got Hilo, who is slightly older than Shay, but he is the Horn of the family, so he is kind of like a street thug and runs all the street operations. And then the third member of the Kwan family is Andon, who is not a biological member of the family, but he's kind of like their cousin. His family was really close to the Kwans, and then they died. And so he's been raised with the Kwans, so he's a student still training at kind of the No Peak Academy, and is expected to be brought in to the family operations as a greenbone, they call them, which are which are people that have jade. And so that's really kind of the family that we're following, and there is all of that opposed on the mountain side. Now, one thing that I just stumbled into, it's really weird seeing her say things like, "Oh man, that guy's green," or "Oh man, he's jaded," because that means something completely different to me than it does in the context of this book. If you say someone's green, you're saying they're a novice, that they're an amateur, they're not very skilled. But in this, it means that they have a lot of jade. If you're green, you've earned your jade. And if they say, "Oh man, he's jaded," it's not saying he's cynical, it's saying that he carries around jade, meaning that he's a greenbone and has the kind of kung fu martial artist powers that jade gives them. And now what makes up the rest of these families is, it's very, guys, this is very, and it's always compared to mob movies, because it is very, very mob. And Fonda Lee said her inspirations are kung fu flicks and also mob movies like Godfather, Goodfellas, and also Yakuza movies, Asian gangster movies. And so it definitely has that feel. She definitely succeeded with this. And so in the rest of the operations for the Klan, we have lantern men, and these are just the loyalists. They hang a colored lantern outside their business, and they're the ones under the Klan's protection. They're like the tributaries to the Klan. They pay protection fees, and, you know, it just shows where they are in the territory and to which clan their loyalty lies. You've got the luck bringers, which are the white collar workers like the accountants and the bookkeepers and anyone who's kind of dealing with money, and the finance guys, really, like the stockbrokers and everything. You see that one clan is better in like hospitality and construction and real estate, and the other one kind of leads the way in gambling and manufacturing and retail. So they're in different industries, and there's this kind of tentative peace between the clans, at least at the beginning. And so this is, more than anything, a family drama. This is a family soap opera. There is a lot of just heavy breathing, and if you've seen Friends and Joey's smell the fart acting, it's a lot of, we need to see what's going to happen.
I'm afraid the situation is much more dire than we'd expected. Your sister is suffering from a...
It's a lot of that, which I think is what kind of lends people to be disappointed by this book if they were expecting more of a kind of a high-flying kung fu action movie, because there is a lot of action in this book, but it is much more muted and it is much less common than you probably think it is. Instead, this is just, I found this to be a really gripping, personal, very, very subdued and muted. It's very heavy, and it's just weighted down with its own gravitas, and everybody's just ponderous and just maneuvering and let's slide some tiles over there, and let's make sure our guys are protected over there. It shows you the inner workings of a mob family, which is really freaking cool. But if you're waiting for the shoe to drop and there to be a bunch of action, you have a little bit of time to wait. It's not till about right almost at the halfway point that the book really picks up. But even me saying it picks up, it does pick up, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? But at the same time, still has a lot of that, let's meet at the table and find some mediation, or let's discuss things over territory, or am I walking into a trap? Those kind of things. So lots of political maneuvering, but instead of in a king's court, it's in kind of like, it's in boardrooms or business offices. So if you are expecting high-flying action, then you're not going to get as much of it as you would like. So our Kwan family, we've got Lon, who is put in charge. He's the pillar. He is not he's not as strong as his granddad. He's not as ruthless and cutthroat as his granddad. Remember, his granddad fought in a war of liberation. It was a different time, and his granddad always thought that his son, Lan's father, was going to succeed him, but he was killed in battle, and Lan is struggling to try to live up to his granddad's expectation of him that he had of his father. But Lan isn't made of the kind of cruel stuff that might be required for the head of a mob family. He's much more moderate in his thinking. He has things like compassion and mercy, which is a problem for his granddad looking over his shoulder, telling him that, you have to excise tumors where they are. You can't leave people around to come bother you later. But Lan is so interesting because he's just trying to do the right thing. He's trying to be strong for the family in opposition of the new head of the Mountain Clan, who is just this ruthless, brutal woman who is just constantly pushing the boundaries of the peace, and Lan is desperately trying to hold everything together. Meanwhile, his sisters come back and he's trying to, mend relationships, mend fences with the family, and so Lan is trying to be strong while not feeling very strong himself. He's a great fighter, but doesn't really want to fight. He doesn't want to tear people up. He wants everyone to freaking get along. He's a fantastic peacetime ruler. Now, on the other hand, we have the younger brother, Hilo, who is a thug. I hate Hilo. He is just the worst kind of he thinks with his fists. He is completely ruled by his emotion. He's quick to anger. He'll put his fist in your face just for saying something bad about the family. And yet, this is one of the strengths of Jade City. These characters are so richly drawn from so many colors in this tapestry. They are not one note. I hate Hilo because he's a thug, and yet his character is so rich and so three-dimensional. He is extremely loyal to his family. He also wants to do the right thing, but is just completely ruled by his feelings and what he thinks strength should look like. He has a difficult time deferring to Lan, even though he does, because it's the right thing to do for the family. He thinks that Lan is too weak and that they should be stronger and more militaristic in their rule of their territory. So even though he's a thug, he still has just these softer sides. He's a boy who never really grew up and is desperately seeking the approval of the rest of his family, and he's constantly overshadowed by his younger sister. He desperately wants his granddad's love. Carl Sen is a douchebag. I hate the old man. Oh my gosh, I hate the old man. So then we've got Shay, who's returned, given up all her jade, and she just is trying to make a life of her own without relying on her family. So because, they're the mob kings. Like, there's two families that rule the whole city. So the family can easily get her a job, get her an apartment, bring her to work in the family. Or even if she doesn't, they can get her all this stuff. Well, she's determined to be an independent woman, apart from the family. They were all super cruel to her, except for Lan, when she left to be with her boyfriend over in Espenia. And so she is trying to make it on her own while still trying to maintain some relationship with her family without being pulled into the family drama and the family politics. And then, bless Andon's heart, he's at the academy. Guys, there's training. Let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. I love it. But he is trying to prove himself worthy of being a call. He knows he's not really part of their family, so he wants to be worthy of that name, but he also is really, really cautious about taking Jade because some stuff in his family makes him more sensitive to it, and I'll talk about Jade in a second. And so he's really, really careful. He's trying to just walk a fine line, but he's the best student at the academy, at least in some of the arts of Jade use, even though he's only a middling, a slightly above average student in their other classes. And so we see his relationship with the rest of the calls, and their relationship as kind of relations with the Mountain Clan slowly deteriorate, and the Mountain starts pushing back harder with their new pillar. It's just so interesting to watch this turf war and them trying to take it. I actually preferred that to a more action-packed street-level view of the goings on, but I know that I am not the norm in that. Many more people would have preferred to see much more action, but I loved the dealings and just everything involved with the upkeep of this city between two rival clans. And I think Lee just did such a fantastic job with these characters, despite the fact that this was just a dense, slow read for me, because it is slow, guys. This book is slow. It is a slow sizzle. It's a single ember catching in kindling, and it just slowly starts catching the kindling on fire before it turns into kind of a blaze toward the end. And these characters are what kept me turning the page, what made me determined to read it, determined to finish reading it, and what's making me excited to read Jade War. Now, there's a lot of buzzwords in the beginning, especially dealing with Jade. So here's how the magic system works. And I think the magic system is really cool, even though it's not super outlined. But here is what I gather from the magic system. So Jade, there are people who are sensitive to Jade, and that's the Kekanese. They are racially sensitive to it, meaning they can draw on its powers without suffering the consequences of kind of Jade overdose or Jade withdrawal. Both of them, both overdose and withdrawal, kind of come with withdrawing is kind of like it's like drug withdrawal. Like it's horrible, and they have to kind of wean themselves off of it. But too much Jade causes what's called the itches, to where they can't stop itching, and they end up killing themselves because it's just they can't get rid of the itch, and so that's terrible. And so each Kekanese has kind of different levels of tolerance of Jade, and so they wear it on bracelets. Hilo has some embedded in his skin, and so each person has different amounts of Jade that they can deal with. But the Aspenians, which are the Americans, and of course the Americans did it, at least in my opinion, they're the Americans, have developed a drug called Shine that allows non-Kekanese to tolerate Jade. It's a drug that when you inject it, you don't get the itches. You can use the Jade without a lot of the after effects, except that it's a drug and it's not natural. So Shine addiction has its own kind of problems. And then there is an aboriginal race on Kekon that has no effect with Jade at all, and they're the ones who are in the mines that are handling the Jade and mining the Jade and shaping it, because they're completely immune to the effects of Jade, and those guys are called Stone Eyes. Now, Jade, there are 6 disciplines of Jade usage. There's strength, steel, perception, lightness, deflection, and channeling. And I'm just going to real quick walk you through those. Here's kind of a primer if you haven't read it, so you'll kind of know what these are up front, because they're never really clear on what each of them do. Strength, you channel Jade to Hulk punch something, and you can punch through a wall. With if you use strength. And all of these are disciplines that you have to be trained to use. You don't really get a ton of use out of these unless you do train in these disciplines, which they do at the academy. So steel is like, you get it's like stone skin, the D&D spell stone skin. You kind of turn your body into steel. If you've seen One Piece, it's the it's the ability that CP9 uses that you can't get through. It's just like steel. You turn your body into as hard as steel or as hard as rock. So you can kind of push, you can deflect blades and deflect attacks and stuff like that. So perception is the most common used. So if you have a good perception aura, it's like playing D&D and rolling a perception check, where you can detect other Jade users. You can, especially with other Jade users, you can detect their kind of emotions, the way they feel. It's kind of like the ability to use a mood ring, really. You can detect murderous intent if someone's coming for you. You can kind of detect intention or mood in an area around you that's wider depending on how powerful your Jade aura or usage is. Lightness means you're super fast. So if you see the, like in One Piece, Sanji can jump on the air. Or you see the people can jump on walls and, like, you know, it just makes you light as a feather, and so you can do all these kinds of awesome acrobatic stuff, like standard kung fu stuff, which is super cool. Deflection is kind of like this aura of, like, it's like this telekinetic aura where you just, like, push stuff out. It's used to, like, deflect bullets or incoming knives or knock stuff over. It's like a telekinetic blast, sonic boom. Sonic boom. It's like that. And then finally, channeling is the most kind of like you pour your aura into other people. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like pushing a magic. It's like, you know, the people who can, like, punch through, like psychically punch through your chest and, like, squish your heart. That's what channeling is. It's like kind of like a psychic ability. It's like in Doctor Strange when they're doing all that psychic stuff. That's really kind of what channeling is. And so hopefully this will help you be slightly less confused with all the buzzwords they, like, heap on you at the very beginning. Guys, I thought the world building in this was really good. Like, I want to know more about the other countries, more about the war to free themselves from the Shatarians. I think Lee does a really good job of, like, dropping, like, subtle, like, cultural things in just, like, one line of description, like the fact that they paint their faces white when they're mourning. There is info dumping. Like, we do learn a lot from just people talking back and forth or people thinking. Again, it's very ponderous. This book is very, very ponderous. It just is. I really like the fact that Kekon, their wars over Jade and this gang turf war, all of that is seen as barbaric and backwards by the rest of the world. The Aspenians see them kind of as, like, barbarians, but also at the same time they think they're really cool. Like, ooh, like it's an island filled with superheroes. So they simultaneously, you know, deride them while also thinking that they're awesome. And I really like that. Again, her character work is what makes this book amazing. I was drawn in and invested in the Kawan family from the beginning. It was slow. It was slow, and that means it's not going to be for everyone, and you definitely need to be in the right frame of mind to read this book. I definitely recommend Jade City. I had a fantastic time with it. On the King Finn approval system, I give this book a solid excellent. This is a solid excellent on the King Finn approval system, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I love this book. This book is so good. It's really good, but it just lacked something that had me being like, yes, Jade City, like I am with Greatcoats or Senlin or even the Poppy War. Like, I just wasn't like hyper focused like I was with Poppy War or just super attached to Falkio or Senlin. But it is a really, really good book. 4 stars all the way. I will read Jade War. I'm not going to be able to get to it right away, but I'm super excited to read it. If you've read Jade War, guys, let me know. Is it even better than Jade City? I have heard such, so please let me know. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you thought of Jade City. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.